You should totally buy this merch. Buy. Link in the description below. Okay, so when did you figure out that you were a Division addict?
Do I have to answer that honestly?
I mean, yeah, I'd prefer that you answered it honestly. So it's anonymous. You don't have to worry about it.
Well, I was walking down the road past a child's playground and there was this kid playing with a ball, and I just had the overwhelming urge to go into the playground and punch him square in the face and say, "Get good, scrub."
Wow, okay, so, like, did you?
Yep, I walked in, punched him, and then I decided to go rouge, so I eventually dropped a fire torrent, and then I popped my alt after things got, really messed up.
Wow, okay, so you realize that's literal nonsense, right? Rouge is a color, you go rogue, and then a torrent, that's not a thing. It's a turret, Turret, and then you pop your ult. It's short for ultimate ability, not your alt.
I don't care, you can't make me not use my Cronus Max.
What? What are you talking about? I'm joking before everyone freaks out. I mean, mostly joking, but in all seriousness, let's get started. For many viewers and subscribers to this channel, the Division game has been a staple in their lives for the past 2 years. I myself have played upwards of 1,600 hours in total, with others that I know crossing the 3,000 or even 5,000 hour mark. And that type of commitment is only possible when a game has truly struck a chord and captured an audience. With Year 3 kicking off this month and Division 2 speculation running rampant right now, I thought I would do a video about the game looking back at its past and making, possibly, a few predictions about its future. Here's the part that a lot of diehard fans really aren't going to like, but I'll try and get it out of the way early and I'll just rip off the band-aid so I don't have to harp on it through the entire video, and I can then address the current state of the game. When this game launched, it was hot, stinking garbage, and embarrassingly bad in dozens of uniquely terrible ways. From game-breaking bugs which straight up locked players out of their accounts, to the engine being fundamentally flawed to allow hacking and make it impossible to prevent. The list goes on and on and on, but essentially, every single complaint you have ever heard about the game, every criticism ever uttered, magnified by 1,000, was deserved and rightfully thrown at Tom Clancy's The Division in its launch form. Now that that's out of the way though, and I'm bracing myself already for the comment section because I know that there are going to be a few outspoken individuals who have something to say about that, but bring it on, I'm ready for it. We can take a look at what the game is rather than what it was, and I think that that distinction is very important. Over time, the ups and downs have been drastic, but it must be acknowledged how hard the development team has worked to get the game on its feet and provide a worthwhile, rewarding, and functional experience. After release, The Division had a two-pronged method of additional content. The first part was paid DLC in the form of the Underground, Survival, and Last Stand. To be quite honest, this was the less important prong for a variety of reasons. Underground was pretty and got boring after about 2 hours with its, and there's giant air quotes around this, procedurally generated content that barely changed at all. Since its release, the Underground has been updated quite a few times, and with its most recent change, adding the unique Hunter NPCs, which ambush players during their missions, it is in a pretty good spot as an alternative farming activity, but it took quite a while to get there, and really, it never truly deserved its price tag. Next up for paid DLC was Survival, which was frankly very cool for about 1 to 2 weeks, with its player versus AI enemies versus the elements versus other players in some situations. With that style of gameplay, there were some really great moments, but in the midst of a true battle royale craze, which is what the rest of the gaming industry was kind of focusing on, it was just different enough, just barely different enough, that it did not capture the true battle royale core audience. But it also failed to appeal to the more casual core audience that was unwilling to invest sometimes upwards of an hour or more into a single game and perhaps even get nothing for that effort. Furthermore, there was one key flaw in the Survival update and DLC, which was the lack of randomized loot. The complete lack of randomization when searching for gear and materials meant that after a very short time span, dedicated players had completely memorized optimal routes and were able to speed run through the activity and completely dominate any other players in the session, who did not have the opportunity to put in a similar amount of playtime and effort. This eviscerated the playability for more casual players who still wanted to participate in the player versus player side of the expansion, and it left the non-PvP section as the only populated part. For some, PvE only survival was great, and this is arguably the best paid update that the Division had, but its lifespan was extremely short. Since its launch, survival has not received hardly any updates at all, not even to its drop table and loot chances, leaving it a completely dead game mode that offers nearly no incentives to play whatsoever. Last up was the Last Stand update, and this one was like the ultimate WTF moment. Last Stand is an 8 versus 8 capture-based domination-style match with normalized stats. At first, this would seem like a really good concept, and there is a lot of very cool elements at play here, but when you really think about it, what were gamers actually looking for in the Division? They were looking for 4 versus 4. Since the largest squad size in the game is 4, and that is how a lot of coordinated groups were dominating in the Dark Zone, players wanted to have a more reliable way to engage in PvP gameplay with their close friends or their preferred squad and get that competitive fix. Last Stand forced you to always have another group of 4 random players on your team. It made sure to get close, but not actually fulfill the cravings that the hardcore PvP players had. The second component to Last Stand, however, was a Dark Zone map expansion, and this was great. This was absolutely phenomenal. The new areas were truly visually fantastic, with upper rooftops and lower subway systems winding below and above the street level portion. It was a wonderful addition to what was debatably the one true enduring success of the Division, which is the Dark Zone. The downside to this, though, as well designed as the map section itself was the fact that the engine, the Snowdrop engine, for those that don't know, that the game is built off of, cannot ever support more than 24 players on a server, which was already being utilized by the previous version of the Dark Zone. What this meant was that the map size was nearly doubled, but there were no additional players to encounter, leading to what felt like a much more sparsely populated Dark Zone experience. For some, this was a really good thing, but for others, it was a truly bad thing. But now that that's aside, we can talk about the free updates, which is the second prong to the post-release content update cycle. And I believe that they are pretty clearly the shining gem that has helped the Division come back from the ashes. Over the course of the game's entire lifespan, there have been a great number of these free updates, which added huge amounts of content, but I will only be covering the ones that I feel are the most important. The first 3 updates after the game's initial broken launch each added a selection of free gear sets, as well as a spread of different quote-unquote incursions. Now, the incursions were a bit of a sore spot for some since they were a tier above missions, but they were a far cry from any respectable raid content that many players were used to from traditional MMORPGs, or better yet, from the Division's indirect competitor, Destiny. Despite the incursions really being lackluster though, they were still harder content, for free, and they came with the unique gear, so that was really a huge plus. Flash forward past all of the paid DLC content and the introduction of a great deal of different gear sets which helped capture players' interest as they mixed and matched and combined them to fit their own playstyle, and we come to the very important Resistance update. And we did skip a large period of time here. There were more updates within that time frame, but Resistance is the next majorly important one. And if we are being open and honest, Resistance added far more valuable content than any previous update or even paid DLC. So this free update was more valuable than the $15 price tag paid DLCs that the game had in its past. Resistance came with a map expansion, which was fantastic, a reduction in the punishing RNG through a resource-heavy optimization station, a new mode called Skirmish, which is the actual 4v4 that everyone wanted, and the introduction, over time, of classified gear and new exotics. It also came with its own mode, titled Resistance, which was an infinite horde-based wave system where you could farm for gear and just fight different types of NPCs over and over. Essentially, it had more content than any paid DLC, all crammed into one update, and it was a really big deal. Classified gear to some may have been a bad thing, but what it essentially did, without actually explicitly doing it, was create a class-based PvP system without nearly as much customization or emphasis on each player's individual build per se. The 6 full pieces of one specific classified gear set would give the user one hyper-powerful role-enhancing boost, and it has rapidly become a trio of main gear sets, with some lesser used but still effective fringe sets that are sometimes encountered. Alongside the Resistance update, and as a method of dispersing these new classified gear sets over time, came global events. Global events took the form of week-long modifiers active throughout the entire game, which would give various buffs or obstacles to players while offering them the opportunity to earn specific credits and buy caches. Side note, it is pronounced caches, not caches. That's not a thing, that's not a word, so stop saying that. These caches would contain chances at the new gear and offer incentives for players to return within a specific time period, like that 1 week of the month where the event was active. Overall, good concept, good execution, and a mostly positive result. Now, before moving on to my predictions, I want to take a moment and acknowledge that from a limping, bleeding train wreck, the game has emerged as a standalone and worthy entry into the looter-shooter genre, with a large spread of content, activities, and gear to play and grind for. This was only made possible through the dedication and hard work of the teams over at Massive and Red Storm Studios, so that hard work should be recognized and commended. I will never gloss over issues and suck up to them, because if we're being totally open here, there have been some epic failures in this game's track record, but through it all, the game endured and climbed back up the rungs to a point of success. Now let's discuss the burning topics on everyone's mind. Year 3, Division 2, or both. Year 3 is right around the corner, and though I may be a less than admired member of the Division community nowadays for a variety of reasons, I still have some connections to social circles built during my history as a creator and community leader within the game. From what I can tell, there is a high probability of lighter and unexciting Year 3 content, and to further lend credence to this theory, I can turn outwards to some other well-known previous Division creators who are even larger than myself and who were involved in the same Elite Task Force initiative that I participated in as well. Wids, Marco Style, and Like Butter have all taken their leave of the game recently with similar stances, citing a slowdown in production and coverage, a lack of meaningful content to create, and a need for new and fresh material with which to push their channel forward. I wholeheartedly agree, and the interesting thing is that all three of these creators are either just as connected to the game and in tune with potential insider sources as I am, if not significantly more so. All this paints a picture to me of extremely light Year 3 content, a continuation of global events which very quickly becomes stale after being recycled a few times, and a lack of meaningful expansion updates due to the allocation of resources to the development of Division 2, which, if yet again we're being honest, is just an inevitability at this point. And, well, you may ask, if the Division 1 is going to dry up in favor of Division 2, then when will we see it hit the shelves? Well, I don't really think a lot of players are going to like my predictions here. The original Division, if we remember, was shown at E3 in 2013, but it did not release until early in 2016, almost 3 years later. The game was delayed multiple times and took far longer than most gamers anticipated to fully release. Not to mention its colossal graphics downgrade, gutted mechanics, and again, total transparency here, guys, they straight up lied at E3. It was almost a completely different game, and it was categorically inferior on release to the product that they advertised. All this does not paint a promising picture for the Division 2. I predict that if we do see any hint of it at all during 2018, it will be about as minimal as it possibly could be, and that the game will then be delayed at least once during its production cycle. Overall, I don't think anyone should expect Division 2 for at minimum 2 to 3 years, and quite possibly 3 to 4 years. What will be made of the original title during that long span of development time? Well, that remains to be seen, but I would hazard a guess at the continuation of global events with slight modifications, and light content here and there, with perhaps, and this is a more specific prediction here, one much larger content drop somewhere in Year 4. So after 2018, maybe at the beginning of 2019, a huge content drop to try and bring a few players back close enough to the sequel's release to boost its engagement and spur sales, and then to hold over the still present hardcore players till the sequel's eventual release. I have a very long history with this game, but it just isn't the main source of content anymore. For the moment, I like to do more diverse stuff, and if there are sizable developments in this game's future, I will almost certainly cover them, and I think that this type of video aimed at a spread of different games is more than likely in the short term going to be the main focus. That's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. Check out the website forums. We are actively looking for people to help us build up a library of content there and to really spur growth on that platform. So if you like Upper Echelon and you want to be more involved, that's the best method to do so. But I'll keep it brief there. And as always, thank you for watching and have a nice night.